My name is Andreas Weiss. I'm. Oh, she's. Okay, give us 1 minute more. Okay, my name is Andreas Weiss. I'm the director of EuroCloud Germany, and I'm dealing more or less most of my time with the topic of certification, which is always related to all the areas of compliance questions, standardization, security, interoperability. So it's a wide scope, and I would like to show you a little bit more details within today's agenda. So we're talking about IT resourcing with cloud computing, and of course the related challenges. For some of you it is quite obvious, for some of you it's probably new about what we are talking here. Then give you a brief overview about the landscape of standards and certification. For sure it is not complete, for sure it's not the last word, and this is the reason why the EU Commission asked ETSI to bring some more light in the area of standards and to find some level of classification and a level of understanding and who are the key players. So what I'm showing here is also related to a study which has been done by the Federal Ministry of Economics in Germany. It is not complete, but it's the first baseline in this area. Then I would like to explain the role of EuroCloud in this context, what we are doing and why we do this, of course, because it's not our key role to establish also new standards, but we think it is reasonable to work in the area of certification and to at least to promote quality criteria, whoever or by which concept it will be audited, but to understand what are the typical challenges within cloud computing and how to deal with it. And then probably we can discuss some conclusions. This session is announced as a workshop, so whenever you have any questions or some comments or additions, do not hesitate to bring your ideas and your thought into this audience. I would start with, just as a warm-up, with a very simple approach, IT resourcing as a data-centric view. This is what we know about IT outsourcing since 15 years. But I think it's helpful to recap these areas. When we look at the data center, which is the key element for IT resourcing, we have to take care about cooling. So what is the infrastructure, the environment of such a data center? We have to talk about power and UPS in terms of electricity. Typically we need some access control, who can go into the data center, because we have sensitive data within this area, so it must be protected. We need some connectivity, which is then the access to the internet with professional exchange nodes, and even today some of the data centers, they are dealing with 100 gigabit connectivity, because we have a huge increase of data volume. So we are dealing, so our association is managing the data center exchange node in Frankfurt, so-called DECX, and they are transferring up to 5 terabit a second through these nodes. So this is the big challenge here, dealing with this traffic. Yep. Of course, we need local area and wide area network infrastructure in the data center, and then, of course, a lot of managed services. And when we ask a data center provider, he will outline a lot of more USPs in terms of his total services, but I think these are some key elements we have to consider. And it's already commodity that we use private IT as well as share IT in such an environment. So what is new now? The first step is establishing a private cloud, which means it's nothing else than a private IT, which is then enhanced by using new technologies, virtualization and everything. And there are no clear borders, and also the definition of private cloud is somehow confusing, of course. It depends on who's the stakeholder behind it. But I think you have an idea of what we are talking about. This is more or less modern IT resourcing within a closed context of a company scope or a community scope. And then we have this triplet of infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, software as a service. Honestly, I don't like this terminology. It is not self-explaining. It can be everything and nothing. When we talk about infrastructure as a service, we should be very precisely. Are we talking about online storage or something like this? We need to have a better understanding about the type of provisioning. At least with these three areas, we have already a scope, but there's still some effort to explain what is behind the scenes here. And of course, if we don't deal with shared IT, everything must be in a separate access area, because we have to deal with sensitive data and it must be protected. And this must be protected not only by the access via internet, it must be also physically protected by the facility manager who is dealing with a data center. Now, when we look at typical data center risk, like IT provisioning, who knows, does it look like this or is it something like this? I think this is, especially for the small and medium enterprises who are engaged to identify a good and reliable IT service provider, they have to deal with such questions. It's the same with cabling. Does it look like this or does it look like this? So this is standard, but who knows what is the reality? But if you do just opt in a cloud service by credit card, it works as long as it works, and when it fails, then you place these questions. Also area risk. We have a lot of data centers who are, for example, in Amsterdam, and you have to take care about flooding, but also they are in the lower floors, and if the water equipment is not well done, then something like this can happen as well. So you need some to consider area risk, the same, how near is a data center to an airport, and what is the risk of damages by this. And then power supply, it might be this model, the gold hamster here, or you have a professional UPC in place. I think this is nothing new, but this is what has been in scope in the past when we did assessments of data centers, of course with a lot of more checks in the area of technical and mechanics in environment and equipment. Let me just summarize these as data center risk in general or area risk. But then the next level is cybercrime, and here we get a new quality, because by cloud computing we have a lot of concentration of data on single entities, which means we have to take care about cybercrime, and it starts already with a malicious insider. Something, I think all the bank people out of Swiss, they know this topic very well, and the German BSI, which is the Federal Agency for Information Security, they stated 80% of the risk is done, or of the data removal is done by malicious insiders. So you have to take care and you have to be very protective. The question is, who is responsible to take care about this resource assignment? And the next one is unsecured devices, stolen passwords. And with a new topic about bring your own device, you have to take care about your mobile devices who have access to the data, who have access, they store credentials to the data, and this is also a risk area. Of course, all the cyber attacks, and the simple one is denial of service attacks, which happens every day in every data center. So you need to have appropriate appliances which can protect you against such attacks. And they happen for sure, and everyone is dealing with these issues. And ongoing malware, and we heard some statistics, up to 75,000 new malwares a week, which can compromise your environment. And we talk about software as a service and even infrastructure as a service with hypervisor or special web-based front ends in conjunction with forums, blogs, and so on. During the international, the IFA in Berlin, Berlin, I think Sony, they had a malware in their blogs, and it has been distributed thousands of times for all those who just wanted to inform about the agenda. So this is a real risk, and we have to deal with this. So you need an ongoing monitoring about malware and mitigation process behind it. Now, when we switch the view and have a look at what is important for the customer, those who should use cloud computing, they need to understand the level of technical and legal security, because they have some obligations. They want to have a clear understanding, am I compliant when I use this service? Of course, they are very keen to understand metrics about availability and service level compliance. In general, they need an understanding about the cloud service provider and its reliability, and not only this entity, but also all the involved sub-providers, because as you can see later, there is a complex supply chain between cloud computing. They would like to see prevention of lock-in situation wherever it is applicable, and of course the general usability and sustainability, which is more a soft factor in this area. Well, we can summarize this in different domains like contract and regulations, in the area of data privacy and data security, which has a very strong relationship, of course. And then in the area of data center and location, the related business operations behind it, and also the nature of the software and, of course, interoperability. So these are the typical domains which are in scope to get a better understanding about the cloud service provisioning, and therefore you have to place the right questions to get appropriate answers. Just to summarize it again, so we have to deal with terms and conditions, with legal requirements. The data location is always an issue, especially in respect to national and EU law about data privacy. Export control is also a topic. So this is, of course, the homework of the customer. He has to do some classification of the security level for his data. And this is something which is rarely made, but it is very important that the cloud consumer has a clear idea about the sensitiveness of his data. In terms of data privacy, which is, of course, a more European-wide topic, we have this data privacy directive. It is even stronger in some countries, not only in Germany, also other countries have very strict data privacy regulations and also a formal process behind it. And if you don't follow this process, the customer might have a real problem, and sometimes you can't fix it later, because as soon as you jump into the cloud, you have to take care about these areas. Data center, which is more or less well known, besides some special risks which are introduced due to cloud computing, business operations according to ITIL, so service management is something we discuss also more than 15 years, and interoperability in terms of data export, completeness of the export, and the general usability, and of course transparency. This is a keyword behind it. So now let's switch the view more and more detail to what is the position of the customer. So in his world, he's familiar to deal with his own private IT, and he is also quite comfortable to use private cloud. But what is next? Probably he is looking for an infrastructure service, and he must distinguish, is it just a service which guarantees that the data are stored national, or is it an infrastructure service which might move the data on a worldwide level? So you have to find some separation in relation to the sensitiveness of your data. Then you probably use a platform service, which is typically no problem in relation to data privacy. You can do some development, and a lot of startups are starting now to build up the application directly on platform services. And then your business entities are asking for a couple of specialized software as a service and functionalities like CRM, like a collaboration software, and also human resource management. And you can see your landscape is getting more and more complex. Beside this, you need a data bridge probably to bridge data between your CRM and your local ERP. So you also need some mediators who can who establish the data flow and synchronize the systems on-premise with the systems in the cloud. And of course, you need some identity management because there's more entities you have to deal with. Your clients are getting bored if they have to consider 15 different password combinations and IDs and have to do always a relog in. So the scope of identity management in conjunction with single sign-on is also getting more and more important. So, and finally, when you see this, all of these individual services are introducing a level of risk. And you have to know how deep is the impact, and you have to do some risk assessment in this area. And this is a real challenge, and it's getting even worse. If you have a look more detailed, who is the entity you have to deal with when you have a certain SaaS provisioning? For example, you opt in a collaboration software via a marketplace, and you make a contract with a marketplace owner. But behind this marketplace owner, you have the company who developed this SaaS collaboration software as a white label service. So it's channeled, so anyone else is involved in this delivery. This company is using a platform service with a certain data center to do the enablement of the collaboration service. And then finally, they also utilize some infrastructure services with also different data centers. And so when we have a complete look, just a single service can be splitted into a level of entities, and probably each of them must be verified and must be, because this is the complete delivery chain of a SaaS service up to the customer. And this is, of course, a level of risk to be considered. Now, when we make a switch and we look at the customer side in general, of course, currently we have a phase that all the enterprises or enterprise level companies, they are using cloud services in all different shapes. But the small and medium enterprises, they are still very concerned about all these issues, and they are not concerned about cloud computing itself. They are concerned about their risk and what do they have to do to make an appropriate compliance assessment so that no one else later on can say, here, you did something you shouldn't have done and you have a problem here. And just to the ratio, we have around 21 million enterprises in Europe and the 25 European Union states. And 20.9 of them are small and medium enterprises, which means they are the micro enterprises is 1 to 10 employees, the small enterprises 11 to 49, and the rest is up to 250. This is a huge market, and if you want to address this market, you have to understand their problems and you have to react accordingly. And so in general, the cloud challenges to be addressed in the communication. Of course, what the customer is interested is in the efficiency of service provisioning. So are we really, is this really a scalable architecture? Of course, there are also limits, even when you deal with Microsoft and you opt Office 365 or something like this. You can negotiate a budget of users which is guaranteed, and occasionally, if everything is okay, they can even resource more than this. But you cannot expect that you can start today with one account and tomorrow you switch to 10,000 accounts without any lead communication in this area. You have to talk about resource management and flexibility, and of course the availability of service, which is also an ongoing discussion. What is availability? Is it what the user thinks about availability, or is it what the provider has made available up to the internet? Because there are still further parties in between who are involved in the delivery of the data up to the end customer. Then how efficient is the service? How clear is the contract, which includes also questions of liability. This is a topic we have to address to the insurance area to find appropriate liability terms for cloud services. What is the level of control of services by users? So what can he? This is we see tremendous pushback from the IT service entities due to the minimum control of the services and transparency in terms of dashboards and so on. Then the governance in general, and also a clear escalation mechanism. And there are a lot of other topics. I don't want to make a deep dive. We share this because I want to get the scope now on some cloud-specific risk. And the first one is data storage against regional or global storage, which means there's also a law behind it which denies that you put data out of the national level or out of the European level. For example, if you deal with financial data which are related to VAT, at least the German government says, before you put the data out of Germany, you have to ask us and you have to get a confirmation. And if you don't do it, you can get fined up to 300,000 euros, which never happened so far, but at least from the legal point of view, there's a risk and we have to deal with it. So it is very clear that a cloud service provider must provide an option for a special type of data to keep them on a national or at least on the European level. Then the lock-in situation in terms of data migration. And this is something which deals with insufficient interoperability. I'm happy that one of our winning startup from Germany, Outrigger, they made a transfer service for mail accounts, which sounds like a simple thing. It's not that simple. Even with a standardized IMAP environment, you have to deal with a lot of tricky things to provide a clear and reliable transformation of mail accounts from one provider to another. But it works, and this is very important. Then shared environment. In the past, you had dedicated servers for dedicated services with a different level of security requirements. But now everything is getting into a shared pool, so you have mixed security requirements, and you have to deal with data separation. You have to be very clear that there is no interaction on a virtualized environment, that high sensitive data are put together by accident on a system which is just prepared for low sensitive data. And this can happen very fast. And this is also related with the change of roles on the operational level. In the past, you had a system operator, a network operator, or someone who deals with the operating system in terms of hardening. So everything was separated. Now, while virtualization, this is getting to a combined environment, and you have a hypervisor who can control the CPUs, the network, the operating system, everything else. So they have to be certified and they have to be trained to deal with this role and to be to have the knowledge to avoid any risk in this area. Now, when we had this initial discussion about relevant standardization areas, I think we have to find a brief separation in terms of technology standards, management standards, legal standards, and there will be something more. It is not sufficient just to talk about the plain technical standards like W3C, where we probably can find a common understanding about data representation on a structural level, but the semantic is even worse. And when we consider EDI, which is electronic data interchange, which has been established already since 30 years, and there's a United Nations approach behind it, like EDIFACT, and even 15 years later, there is still some discussion how to present a standard invoice in an electronic form. So this is something we have to deal with, and when we talk about the cloud computing, the interaction between software as a service, it will be a semantical issue. So we have to talk about semantics and an understanding about business objects to interchange address data between a CRM system and an ERP system. But as you can see, there are a lot of differentiations. This list has not been invented by us. It was a study of Booth and company together with FZI. You can get this link. There's an English short summary just about the complete landscapes of standardizations. And I will make a deeper dive into these areas like management models and processes, also with controlling models and processes, which is then the area of certification. So there are a couple of well-known certification standards. I think the big one is ISO 27001, for example, which is often used as a certification and is also shown to the customers to show, hey, look at me, we deal carefully with the environment, also with your data. The scope of the ISO 27001 is that there is an appropriate information security management system in place. This is very good and this is very important, but it is limited applicable on cloud computing. What we see is that a SaaS provider is saying, hey, our service is ISO 27001 certified. But when you look into the scope, no, the data center has been ISO 27001 certified and not the service. And this is the big problem here. We need an understanding about the message behind such a certification and what is the scope. And it's difficult for most of the potential cloud users to understand the complete control set and the scope and the area of such a certification. And it's the same with also a well-known standard, formerly SAS 70, Type 1 and 2, which is now rebuilt as SSAE 16 for the US or ISAE 3402. You can imagine just with the numbers and the wordings, it's already difficult to follow this path. This has a scope to verify the reliability of the completeness of transactions. The initial driver was the SOX compliance in the US in terms of financial transactions, and also this is a very high value certification, but it has a very specific scope, and we have to discuss about how this is applicable for cloud computing as well. And then we know also other standards like PCI, which is a very special scope in terms of everything which is in relation to credit card, debit, ATM, postcards, and so on, to provide a security, because by this, with these information, you have direct access to money, which is really a risk. And then we know also a well-known standard is like COVID, which is more or less in the scope of quality management, which can be used for development cycles, for management cycles. So it's also a very generic certification approach or auditing approach in conjunction with control criteria. Now, when we look a little bit more about cloud-specific auditing, EuroCloud established a program which is so-called Star Audit, and it is specially designed to reflect the needs of the market in terms of what do we need about a cloud service to make a decision to use this cloud service for my business. And we took, it is a best practice approach, and I will explain later on how we developed this approach, because it covers, we have the cloud service in scope and not any provider which might be part of the cloud service supply chain. And this is the important thing, because this is what the customer is finally using, the cloud service. Whatever is behind it, he would like to know, can I use this service, and not can I use a certain provider in a special assembly of provisioning. And we have to deal with data privacy. You might say all the Germans have some paranoia about data privacy, but at least it's a law. So what can we do? If it is a law, we have to consider the law and we have to take it into account. We are very happy if we get some more harmonization and more flexibility in this area, because our data privacy law has been established at a time when you still have the paper files, and it was never considered to deal with mass data in an electronic environment which can be accessed from any point in the world. Now then, another program like FedRAMP, this is something which has been established in the US for the government environment, which is also showing a certain direction in terms of a government-wide program that provides a standardized approach to security assessment, authorization, and also monitoring. Continuous monitoring is a topic I will also explain further on. for cloud products and services. So it's a specially designed certification process and auditing process for cloud services, but in scope for the US government and with a high scope and security, because they think this is the key part which has to be justified before anyone can promote his service into the governmental area. And then of course CSA, which is definitely a relevant player. They have, it is a non-profit organization with a mission to promote the use of best practices, which is a similar approach as we have, but they have a clear scope on security in all the aspects. And I think they make a very good job, and it's very good what they are promoting here. We still have just the scope of security, and as we understood previously, there are more domains to be considered to have a full understanding about the cloud service. So I try to bring this into a general overview, and the ISO 27001, from my point of view, it has a limited cloud readiness, which does not mean it will not be better established for the future. There are ongoing projects in the JCT 27 and JCT 38, and EuroCloud is joining these initiatives, and we want to promote also our understanding about cloud services and common criteria in this area. But the biggest problem is it is too generic for cloud services, because we need to understand which entity and what has been audited to find any information for my decision in terms of cloud assessment or vendor choice assessment. COVID has nearly, from my point of view, no direct cloud readiness. It is very generic. It's a quality framework. Is applicable for anything. Any provider who has a COVID certification, it's good, of course, because at least they've shown, yes, we are able to show a level of quality and maturity in our overall processes, but there are too much gaps or you have to do a lot of more assessments beside it. For the SIS 70 and all the following auditing, I would say this is a excellent extension, because when you deal with ERP systems in the cloud, you need at least something like this to justify that the processing and the transaction management within the software is correct. Because if you find any errors in this area, you can't fix it anyway. Then you have really a problem in terms with your financial offices, and so I see this as an add-on which is applicable for certain types of services. With the EuroCloud Star Audit, we definitely have a European view on what is relevant, because we also consider national law, the general security requirements, compliance requirements within the European Union, and also national data privacy requirements, and also interoperability. The key part of the EuroCloud Star Audit is that we have a common scope. Every service is assessed against the same criteria, and we have always the same statement behind it. So, in fact, it is comparable. About FedRAMP, we see there's a huge bureaucracy. It is partially a assessment, which can be good, but it must not be good. We have seen similar problems with Safe Harbor, where it is also a self-assessment project. And it is not working as expected, let us say it this way. CSA with a clear scope on security, interoperability, it has a full cloud readiness, and it is an excellent security assessment, but it is a limited scope in this area. And PCI is something to consider, probably add on as well. The study of booze, they identified on a European level that ETSI and EuroCloud and ENISA, that this is a good triplet to promote the additional work in terms of cloud compliance, certification and standards. And I think, as we see today, we have all the links together, and probably going from there And we need also the communication with the international organizations, of course, with ISO, with CSA, and all the other relevant players who are promoting standards in this area. Just to explain how we build up our Star Audit certificate is we have a lot of players. Of course, ENISA initiated this with the Cloud Computing Risk and Compliance Report and then further papers. Then the German Federal Ministry of Information Security published a Cloud Computing Security Cornerstone paper. They have the background about the ISO 27001 because they established also an add-on framework on this, and they already announced key areas to be addressed and to be reviewed for compliance assessment. Of course, CSA is promoting a lot of resources. We're working with Fraunhofer, also with certified accountants like KPMG. These are the guys who are at the customer side, and they do ask the painful questions about what is the justification for your cloud service provider choice, and is everything according to your internal and external compliance requirements. Of course, we communicated a lot with cloud service providers, and we established also an expert group, especially on the area law and compliance, and we took also elements out of the IT audit framework. And by this, we promote a complete stack of competence. First of all, we have these some guidelines about law, data privacy, and compliance. You can get them for free via the website. As a next level, we also build up a book where we especially address to small and medium enterprises, to the CEOs, CIOs, to understand cloud computing and to understand the criteria and what is necessary to avoid any problems and risk. And then as a next level, we are promoting now a self-assessment just to communicate the criteria to the cloud service providers on a very inexpensive way. The good thing in this tool we are promoting here is that it is a complete risk compliance management tool, and it can help you to identify risk and to monitorize risk, to understand if we have a gap here, what is the monetary risk and what is the priority to fix such a gap. And then we have finally the Star Audit. And beside this, we are also communicating via a Promise. This is a service for SMEs, for small and medium enterprises, to build up knowledge and quality management. And we are also promoting the background about cloud computing and criteria via this channel, because I think it's very important to address these information to this community and to ease up their process to make the right decisions. So finally, just to give the common scope of the certification here on the EuroCloud part is, we want to provide a generic statement about the reliability of the cloud service, and this is always a key scope, the service provider and involved sub-providers behind it. So we have to follow the complete chain, and the entry point is the service where you have a contract, of course with a primary legal entity, but you have to consider what's behind it. I can tell you we had to deny a lot of certifications because there was a software as a service provider who said we promote this service in Germany and Belgium, but then we made the assessment they wanted to have a certification for Germany, and then we identified, sorry, the provisioning of the infrastructure is done by Amazon. And we are not saying that Amazon is something bad. They have an excellent service, it is high secure, but when you look into the terms and conditions, we can never get the link between the data privacy requirements and the terms of condition. So this is a difficulty. And we have to communicate all these terms and conditions, and they might be certified for Ireland or for Belgium or for France, but they couldn't be certified for Germany. This is the issue. We can't jump over this hurdle. Because we have to take care about the commissioned data processing regulations, the data protection regulations, bookkeeping regulations, which are mandated by law. Of course, we have to have a deep look into the operational processes and the quality of service. The service level compliance is also a topic. If the data center provider who is provisioning the infrastructure is offering 98.5% availability, then the SaaS service on top of it cannot promote 99.9% availability. So it must be, we have to do some plausibility checks in between. And then, of course, log-in situations and vendor change options. I think this is very important to make the first decision. And if the cloud service provider is acting well, there's no need to make a vendor change. But this is the first hurdle we have to overcome in terms of the decision for small and medium enterprises to jump into the cloud. And of course, all the surroundings like training and support. So when we go through an audit, we act as a customer. We log in, we get an account, and we check all the typical service elements. We don't make any functional assessment. We just want to look that the service itself is correctly provisioned to the customer. Okay, looking at this, and with different domains I announced with contract and law, data security and data privacy, data center location, business operations, software interoperability, and looking then at the established certifications, all of them, partially they have some overlaps, but they have a certain scope. Or you can move the scope from there to there to there to there. It's not very clear. It's not very transparent. What we would like to achieve with the STAR audit to show a common scope, it might not have the same depth. It is not the superset of all potential certifications, of course, but we have a common scope. What we have approved, therefore we have a statement, and this can be taken, and if the customer has additional requirements, this can be negotiated individually between the customer and the provider. And then the future goal is something which is also relevant, continuous monitoring. Because when we talk about audits, you have a timestamp here and probably a timestamp 2 or 3 years later, or repeated every year with an intermediate audit, but what is in between? So what is under discussion is that we have a continuous monitoring wherever it is applicable. Of course, we cannot monitor a contract automatically, but we can monitor security areas, entitlement, availability. So there's a lot of areas which can be monitored, which is a clear indicator about the maturity and the reliability of cloud service provider as well. A sample is, for example, Initiative S, which is out of the German Internet Association. They have established a service together with the German Federal Ministry of Information Security, where we scan websites against malware. So you can register there, and then there is a bot which is always looking for malware within the scripts and identifies, and there is a process behind it to inform, here you have a problem. It can be entered by anyone, but there is a problem, there's a malware in your website, please take care about it and remove it, because this is important. So this complete abuse process is very important in terms of cyber attacks. And when we talk about cloud computing, yeah, we are talking about online services, and it's similar to what we know already, and we have to establish similar services as well. So my conclusion here is security, interoperability, and legal compliance, these are the success factors for a wide cloud adoption in Europe, because this must be clearly communicated and clearly justified, and then I'm pretty sure that a lot of more small and medium enterprises will jump into the cloud. Because the cloud service assessment itself is very challenging, especially for these enterprises. And just consider you want to choose a CRM system, which is, and you have 5 in choice, and you have to do an individual assessment about all these topics. You need 40 or 50 days just to find an assessment which cloud service provider can be used for our company. And then, of course, beside this, you have to do the contract level and the functional implementation, everything. And you might understand then that it is a huge issue for this community to make the next step in this area. And of course, therefore, we need transparency about the cloud service supply chain. And from our point of view, the statement behind the certification should be always the same, to be comparable. if you have an ISO 270 plaque on this, and both of them are completely different, they have a different message behind it, then you have to make the deep dive and you have to understand what has been checked, and then you can match it to your own compliance criteria, and then you have, again, time to spend to make a decision. And we need standardization, as we have heard already tomorrow during the initial sessions. We need legal harmonization, and luckily the European Union has at least made a statement to work on this, knowing that this might take 2 or 4 or 6 years further on. And we need an ongoing knowledge transfer to the market about what's going on around cloud computing and what is relevant to make the right choice. So that's what I wanted to share with you. Thank you for your attention. And now, further questions? Eins.
Maybe a comment and a question. Comment. Thanks a lot. This is just a wonderful presentation. I just enjoyed it a lot. Question. Until recently, I had the past. I was a security auditor, IT security auditor, and to do security audit for my clients, I had to be certified. So I ended up being a CISSP certified, CISA certified, so that I'm not, just pretending knowing what I was talking about when I went there, but I was certified to prove that my opinion was reliable. For this EuroCloud Star certification, do you have the same kind of certification programs for the auditors? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, sure. As if you remember, we had different domains here, so we need different skill levels. So if you're in the area of security auditing, by now, of course, because it is very strong related, we typically use auditors who are already approved for ISO 27001 certification, because there's already a strong relationship. So we established some requirements, and we also request a CV and also the approval. And we take what is already well accepted and known.
And
Sorry?
You say we.
Okay, we as a EuroCloud association, and the program has been initially developed in Germany, and we are now in the phase of the international rollout, and this will be, we are in each country which is participating in this process, we will also communicate this requirements, and I can also just give you by now a brief overview, but it is an open framework, but we have to take care about that the execution is done in the right way. And we also, and it is still an ongoing process to moderate about the control criteria, to refine them. As you also understood, we have the IT area of law, so this means typically we use local lawyers with a special scope on IT contracts, and this is also justified. We are also in relationship to some leading auditor framework or auditor companies like KPMG and Pricewaterhouse, who are also looking forward to use such a certification scheme within their process. On the other side, EuroCloud by now is not an accreditation. This is not our core business. We are looking now for partnership in this area, and we are pretty sure we have to go into a more formal process within the next few months. But by now, we have established in Germany this entity, in Austria. We are dealing with Slovenia and Portugal as well to build up such competence teams. And if you're looking forward in your country to be part of such an auditing process, just drop a mail to me and we can coordinate it with the local coordinators in the countries. I think
Yeah, just a second. Scenario. I'm a cloud customer. I have an SAS built on a cloud. Somebody built it for me, and the company bankrupt. The SAS company is bankrupt. There is a thing for the software known as software escrow. Why don't we invent something like cloud escrow?
Well, it's not that easy because, as you see, first of all, it's a complex provisioning, and you need to understand all the dependencies. By now, just to know what we can check by now is just that the data are still in a shape that it can be reused by the customer. So you have to live with the issue that if the SaaS service is no longer available, that you need to find yourself a replacement. I think there are some initiatives, at least, and I think it's also for Luxembourg, for example, that there's a guarantee that the operational services will be extended even if the initial SaaS provider is unable to continue his business. But this might be also just for the next 3 months. So in terms of the certification, we verify that the data which are managed in the SaaS applications are exportable in a way that you can reuse it without losing referential integrity and so on in the system. Thinking about SaaS escrow agreement, it's not that simple that you just have to deposit some software at a trusted party, because we are talking about cloud services, and the cloud service is a complete setup of the complete service delivery. And this is still a problem, and I don't have a solution right now.
Well, but
you have a comment here?
I'm an IT lawyer myself. I'm not specializing in insolvency law, but we must face the fact, I think, that most escrow agreements are, in that particular case, not valid and binding when it comes to insolvency, because European insolvency law does not permit these clauses, really. So most of these clauses are ineffective, I would say. And also, I think you also wanted to stress the point that the services cannot be rendered, of course, by an insolvency administrator. He simply cannot provide cloud computing services. That's another problem. And entirely different matter I wanted to address very briefly. Just yesterday, I had a discussion about the question, why do we need cloud computing contracts at all? Cannot the computers do it all? Come to an agreement and we leave it all to the computers to do the contracts. And the desire is to have nothing to do with contracts at all, which is understandable, and just to have, if anything at all, just a 2-page agreement, something very short. Yeah. And I think this shows that it is very important, what you also stressed, to raise the awareness among small and medium enterprises especially, that this is a very complex field, also a very complex field of law, and that we really need to pay attention to have the right agreements in place.
Okay. Any further comment? Or this question? Otherwise, you will miss your lunch.
Thanks. I would like to actually bounce on one of the previous questions about the fact that whether to know whether you have some auditors that will be certified actually for being used in the context of this certification process. And my question is to know whether actually the actual scheme itself is not too broad, because if you would like actually to certify a cloud service provider as such, meaning that you will be including, from what I could understand actually, areas such as IT, law also, and this sort of mixture, for example, would certainly require some sort of minimum requirement for fulfilling the certifications, I presume. So if for example, someone comes to be very, let's say that the level of adequacy actually of the actual security is not questionable, but the legal issues has some little issues, then would you put some weighting actually between these two aspects, or you just decide, okay, you don't pass the certification process?
In terms of legal checks, we are just following the law. So we're just checking, is this in compliance with the local law? Because the star audit is established per country. So you can have an international service provision and you can audit it against Germany, Austria, Spain, UK, France. And of course, if the service delivery is done out of the same resourcing, then we don't have to recheck the security if it has been checked once. Then this is why we have these 5 modules. Then you just have to make the additional law check against a certain national law if it is confirmed that the complete rest of the provisioning is following the same rules which has been already certified. And of course there are always cross-dependencies between the legal view and what has to be done on the security and on the data privacy level. And even in the Euro directive you have a legal requirement, and then you have the technical and organizational requirements which must be fulfilled, which is strongly related to data security, because you cannot have data privacy without data security, of course. So there's, and this is something we deal also with in our process, that we have joined, so we build up a team of up to 5 auditors. Some of them probably can address 2 of these areas together. But then they have also a joint committee where they discuss certain areas like password management and something like this. Or we had a good sample is in the contract it has been stated that the data will reside in a certain country for sure. But what they haven't announced is that the support forum has been served out of the US. And here we have the issue. It must be transparent for the user, otherwise they cut and paste personal data, put it into the ticket system, and then the data are flowing into outside the EU, and then you have a compliance problem. So these are also some cross-dependencies, so we cannot do it on an isolated view. We have to establish the certain competence for the different areas, but we still have a joint approach to perform the assessment for the cloud service, which is then, of course, bound to a certain cloud service provider. Because I can give you another sample. You probably know the Fujitsu Business Store. They can it's a marketplace approach, and you can put an application into this service. So the customer might imagine now Fujitsu is my counterpart, but he's not. It is probably a SaaS provider behind it, and Fujitsu is just channeling the service through it. So it must be very clear who is my contractual and legal partner in this area, who is responsible and who is responsible for the liability of this service, and who is interacting. If I go through the Fujitsu part and enter the data, and then it will be transferred from the Fujitsu data center into the SaaS provider data center, then you have to consider this, and you have to know this, and you have to consider both entities for such a cloud service assessment. It is not very easy, of course. That's a reason why we reduce it to a clear scheme and control set which can be executed, and also in relation to the cost level, because each auditing is a certain level of costing effort or human effort, and this must be in a correct relation. And by this we cannot cover everything, but what we certify, there we have a clear statement behind it. Okay. Just
one last question, actually, just for clarifying my mind. I remember reading some months ago, actually, on it was relating to the Cloud Security Alliance, and they seem to have the same sort of schemes also. It was about star audit and stealth audit. Is there any difference actually beyond the actual scope?
Are you talking about the CSA star?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah. As I mentioned, CSA is just scoped on security. Okay. And it has a good depth. It covers also various areas we do not have in scope, where we see this is currently not sufficient differentiated. And you will see in the future in the CSA metrics there are also just some optional control sets. You say if the nature of the service is like this, then you have to consider this, and it's getting more and more complex, of course. And then we have to talk to them, and we have to synchronize them. And what CSA already did, they matched it into existing control sets, and you can see the complete overlap. it's not completely newly invented, but it has to be considered in relation to the nature of cloud service provisioning. I think we have to stop now. We are over the time. Thank you very much for your attention.